going back and navigating the life of a 7-year-old whose father had just been stripped away, who was taken to prison, who had just been kind of outed as a pedophile, child abuser, to a point where her whole world had just completely crumbled. Like, she didn't know what the hell was going on. Family was just chaos. Everybody was arguing. And then a mother who had just completely spiraled into just self-sabotage completely and stepping back away from her children. And her children kind of having to raise themselves and fend for themselves in a way that they didn't even really know how. Navigating those years and that kind of turmoil, going through all of those things, and then getting to a level of teenage years where you genuinely have to shapeshift. You've got to put on masks. You're constantly worried about judgment. You're constantly trying to show up as someone else, and just not really knowing, having any kind of level of identity as to who you actually are as a person. Like, those were some really, really heavy years. And the teenage years of drinking into oblivion, getting taken to the hospital because you drank too much vodka at the age of 11, and just being kind of stripped away from family and taken to a totally new place, moving to a whole new destination because all of a sudden your mum's decided that she wants to get you away from all of the disruptions and all of these different distractions. That was some heavy, heavy, heavy stuff to deal with. And I think as a child going through all of that, it really was one of those kind of navigate and try and find your own way and find your own footing, to a point where you just kind of lose yourself a little bit. So kind of fast forward past that through the years of teenage, kind of going out, being the girl's girl, always being in the middle of all of the chaos, always being the loudest one in the room, the one that needs to kind of like attention to kind of deflect how much she's shrinking inside because she's so scared of what everyone else is going to think, to getting to 16 and kind of meeting the love of your life and falling into a relationship where suddenly you learn that you can actually trust men again. So going back to the childhood, male figures who were supposed to be the people in your life that were the most trusted, the ones that were supposed to be there through thick and thin, to really see you through, to make sure you were protected, to make you feel safe and secure, to recognizing that they weren't those figures, like, can create some massive, massive distrust in men. I had a stepdad who used to hit me with a slipper when I would take an extra packet of crisps out of the cupboard, or take me to the police station because I had stolen crisps and chocolate bars out of the cupboard without asking for permission. So when I got to 16 and actually kind of met the love of my life and fell into this relationship, there'd been so many different layers that needed completely stripping back away from that to get to that level of trust that could truly be felt after so many years of trauma and so many different layers of being mistreated, building that mistrust towards men. So this relationship that started at the age of 16, that is still currently ongoing now, that blossomed into 17 years now, I'm 34. So blossomed into all of those years of marriage and navigating. I think looking back and looking at all of the different experiences as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, and then stepping into motherhood and stepping into kind of raising my own children and building the belief systems and the inner strength to recognize that these things are never going to happen again. We're never going to allow these things to happen again. It just takes some massive, massive kind of inner work and facing those demons and going through the different kind of therapies and doing all of that inner work to really get to a place of inner peace where you can recognize that you are who you are, and that diamond that's kind of hidden under all of those layers of concrete that you put around your heart, that diamond can actually represent itself again and it can show back up. In 2021, there was human design kind of fell into my life, and human design was one of those things where when you look through your chart, you actually see that this is who I am. This is what makes me me. And you find that level of relatability that is just completely stripping back all of those layers and recognizing that it is safe to be this person. It is safe to show up and represent myself. It is safe to be authentic. It is safe to kind of lose the mask. And all of those different layers that had been stripped away had actually disappeared for good, to a point where I could just become me again. I could just be the person that I wanted to be. And then be able to kind of set my life mission to being the person that I always needed in my times of struggle. In those times where I was laid out in the park and I just wanted a hug from my mum, I just needed somebody just to wrap their arms around me and tell me that everything was going to be okay. As teenagers, we go through so much kind of mental trauma. There's so many different expectations. Right, you need to show up like this and you need to be like this. Right, okay, if you don't wear these shoes, you can't be accepted. All of these different kind of rules of engagement, so to speak, that show up in society are what is wrong with society as a whole, because we then try and mold and shapeshift into however many different people, and we just end up becoming a square peg in a round hole, exhausting ourselves and completely depleting ourselves and losing ourselves along the way till we can finally get to that point where we can look in the mirror and actually recognize the person that's looking back. So I think one of the biggest lessons that I've actually learned from all my life experience is you don't have to become the person and the victim of those experiences. Like, you can take those experiences, there's so much to learn from them, but then the strength that you can take from them as well to recognize that every single battle that we face in that moment feels like the hardest battle. It feels like the toughest thing that we could ever face. But then the next battle is going to come along. And then we disregard the fact that we've just fought that battle previous. We thought that was the hardest thing that we were ever going to face. But in actual fact, we overcame that. And I think sometimes we don't take enough time to really be able to look back and think, hang on, well, if I can do this, I can do absolutely anything. Like, when we truly stand and look at ourselves in the mirror and we think, what is our deepest, darkest fear? And then you can look back over your past, over your history, and you can think, well, actually, I've kind of faced that. Then everything else that's been scary suddenly loses its power and it loses that fear factor. So from that child that was kind of happy life, had a dad, had everything going for her, to this kind of like in between, there was a lot of healing there for me. There was a lot of different traits in which I was kind of showing up as the person that was developed probably up to the age of 7 in a lot of ways mentally, because my trauma had kind of kept me stuck in that age. So when I started to heal that and started to surpass that, then I started to get to that point of confidence and understanding and actually recognize that it's okay, it's safe. But all we ever want as human beings is to feel safe, to feel loved, and to feel accepted. So when you can actually go out and you can create those things within your own life, then you've kind of got everything that you ever need. Looking back over my healing journey as a whole, like, it didn't actually start until I think it was around 2020. It was when lockdown hit, when we finally had that time to slow down, that time to step out of the rat race, to just kind of be and just to exist without the pressures of going to work, picking the kids up, rushing home, getting dinner done, all of those things. It gave me so much time to be able to think and process things. Like, I became an avid journaler. I filled so many journals during lockdown, just literally writing down my feelings. Like, at first, when somebody mentioned journaling to me, I was like, well, what the hell do you mean? Like, I don't even know how to do that. And it can seem so complicated. But when I finally picked up that journal and I picked up that pen and just gave myself permission to just free write without any expectation, just write whatever comes up, then that completely unlocked something within me. And I think there's so much power in recognizing there's certain people that we still hold certain energies around. And that energy that we hold on to can kind of become trigger points. And those trigger points then send our nervous system out of whack when those names are mentioned, or when you see that person in the street, for instance. So one of the greatest things that I actually used to be able to like kind of disconnect from all of that and to heal from all of that was writing letters to these people. Absolutely every single thing that I possibly needed to say, I wrote it all down. And then at the end, I forgive you. I let this go. I no longer give this person power over my life. And then I would burn the letters. The release that I felt after doing that, I think I probably did letters to about 12 different people throughout the time in lockdown. And the lightness that comes from that, you genuinely feel like you've just put down a backpack full of bricks. I went through so many different levels of self-discovery and I learned so much about myself along the way. And it was the most beautiful journey, because then I have been able to translate that and go on and kind of use that work and discover what my purpose is, what I want to do with my life. Like, I worked in a dead-end job for 16 years, literally like get up, take the kids to school, go to work all day, rush home, pick the kids up, all of that. And it was just that continuous monotony and that autopilot that just stops you from actually seeing the beauty in life, stops you from looking forward to things because you never actually switched on and present. You're just always living from a program that was probably written about 10, 15 years ago. When you start to pay attention to those programs that you've actually got within your subconscious mind, you start to recognize what belief is driving this behavior, creating this habit, and making me behave and kind of show up in this way. When you can look at those things and you can really trace it back, what habits are you trying to get rid of? What habits are kind of showing up in your day-to-day that are stopping you from showing up in your fullest expression? It's usually 9 times out of 10 a lack of self-worth or a lack of self-esteem that creates most of the destructive habits and the destructive behaviors that we actually participate in. So when you can go back and you can kind of do that inner work with, again, no expectation. Like, one thing that I have learned over the past few years is if I don't put my oxygen mask on first, I'm not going to be in a fit state to look after everybody else. I've got 2 children and a husband and a household to run. I've got a dog and 2 cats. So I need to be at my best, and I need to give myself permission to be able to say no to other people, to be able to put boundaries in place to protect my energy, protect my well-being, and protect my mental health. Because if I don't do that, nobody else is going to do that for me. And there's something that I like to call the pyramid of impact. So you are at the top of your pyramid. And if you are taking care of yourself, you're radiating positive energy, and you're just feeling so good, you could genuinely impact hundreds of people in a day with that positive energy because it transfers, and then you're brightening people's days unknowingly. But it also has a negative effect on the flip side. So if you aren't taking care of yourself, you're burned out, you feel like shit all the time, you're constantly just kind of running on empty, then that is going to have such a huge negative effect on the people that you surround yourself with. So you're going to naturally be reactive. You're naturally going to be snappy towards people. You're going to feel overwhelmed, and you're going to be in a constant state of fight or flight. So just taking that time, whatever that looks like for you, whether that looks like a bubble bath, self-care can just be imagining all of the stress and the cares and the worries of that day just washing away and just letting them run down the sink so that you've got that time and that space to be able to just come back to you. Because we get so tied up in what everybody else is doing. There's so much noise. So disconnecting and taking that time to just be and to just, we are human beings, we're not human doings. We're not designed to just be productive all the time and constantly be doing something. So just being is the most productive thing that you could possibly do sometimes. And it's the kindest thing that you can do to yourself. In terms of when it comes down to the self-care, if you wake up on a morning, for instance, and you feel really overwhelmed, one of the most important things that I started doing was putting my phone away from my bed so that I could get out of bed on a morning without just picking my phone up and sitting and scrolling. Because again, you're absorbing the energy from that. Getting a journal before you go to bed on a night and brain dumping, just getting everything out of your head. Just write and write and write till you can't write no more. Chances are, most of it is probably going to be the same thoughts that you had the previous day, but then you get to start to recognize patterns. And when you can recognize the patterns, you can see what's recurring and you can see what's showing up more and more often so that you can then start to take back control of that. And we've all got something called a reticular activating system, and this is a total game changer. Like in terms of manifestation, if you've heard of the red car theory, what you focus on multiplies. So if you get out of bed on a morning, you've stubbed your toe. Oh, for God's sake, I've stubbed my toe. Today's going to be a really bad day. So then you go downstairs, you spill your coffee on your shirt. Then you go to get in the car and you realise you've not got enough fuel to get to work. Then you maybe get stuck in traffic. So all of these things, you've programmed your mind to look for those events before the day's even begun. So try flipping that. And on a morning, when you get out of bed, today's going to be an amazing day. It's going to be the best day ever. And set that intention, because intention is everything. And when you get intentional with things, then you can truly start to create your own life. You don't have to be a victim of society. You don't have to be somebody that has every single move that they make dictated to them. Like, you are the main character. This is your story. You get to choose exactly what your life's going to look like, how you're going to show up, what you're going to do with yourself, and what kind of impact you're going to have. Because nobody ever said on their deathbed, I wish I'd spent more hours in the office, so make it count.